Hi there, welcome to episode 24 of Side Chat. In this episode, James and I talk about imposter phenomenon. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. If you have any suggestions or comments, please send them to sidechat@omnisite.com or tweet to side_chat. Hi there, and welcome to episode 24 of Side Chat. This is Dr. Austin Tay, and I'm here with today with me again is James Molly Kirk. Hi, James. How are you?
Austin, I'm really well, thank you.
A lot of our listeners must be wondering what happened to both of us. Why is it such a long time that we have not had an episode? Wow, both of us have been in transition, I guess, and we found this is the right time that both of us are slightly kind of settled down, and we decided to talk about a particular topic today, which I think is quite interesting. Both of us probably have experienced this. So this is a topic about imposter phenomenon, right? It has been talked about, in the media. People felt that they are successful, but at the same time, they feel that they are suffering from, or they exhibit this imposter phenomenon. Just as I normally do, I'd like to give a definition first, if I may. So, what is imposter phenomenon? Now, the imposter phenomenon was first described by Dr. Pauline Clance from her observation in a clinical setting. Now, individuals with the imposter phenomenon, they all experience intense feelings that their achievements are undeserved and worry that they are likely to be exposed as a fraud. And all this causes distress and maladaptive behavior to those people in her research there. When I read this definition, James, I was thinking to myself, whoa, this is sometimes how I feel, as a professional. Sometimes I go, am I actually that good? Am I a fraud? Maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. But we were having this discussion before we record this. I think it could be something that is very normal. As human beings, we go through the kind of cycle of rumination, cycle of thinking. But then it could be something that we can discuss a little bit further. How do we actually identify them? Who are the people who actually will suffer from that? And are there particular traits that we can identify? And what should we do about it? And I think we're going to end this podcast with perhaps some tips for our listeners to deal with this imposter phenomenon. Just to add on, the next part here, with this research has been done by Dr. Clance. There are a couple of research that came out after that, and those people who kind of been classified as kind of exposed or suffer from imposter phenomenon would be professional women. One of the studies that was done by Dr. Clance in 1978, professional women were feeling that they were suffering from imposter phenomenon. And there are also both genders affect both genders in this phenomenon. Different occupations. I think some of the research that we found or I read is that the higher the person is in their professional excellence, they are more likely to actually suffer or experience that. Culture, and also people who likely to experience about 70% of people generally will experience at least one episode of imposter phenomenon in their lives, right? So there's a lot of research there. So hearing that, James, what are your thoughts?
All right, I'm chuckling. When you said 70%, which I've seen that figure banded around, I have no idea what it's based upon.
Yeah.
I've not seen the research that says 70%. But if it's 70%, the first time when I saw it, I thought, well, then it must be normal human existence. It's not. which is why I noticed you're not calling it syndrome, which I think is absolutely correct as well. Syndrome is a set of, symptoms and so on. And a phenomenon I think is more correct, that it's caused that way, because it looks like, although the research was done on successful women back in 1978, 150 of them, which is all it was in 1978, when few women high performers were probably in the workplace, and it was positioned as a thing for women, high performing women, which was already really interesting, because when I was looking into it in some of the popular stuff, people who claim to have this imposter syndrome, which is still often caused in popular press, include people like Tom Hanks, Michelle Obama, Tony Robbins. These are hugely successful people, multi-million dollars, multi-whatever, everything. I mean, huge celebrities, incredibly intelligent and successful people, who they say, well, sometimes I think I'm a fraud. And I'm thinking, well, is it only then successful people who feel this and yet are still successful? So it's obviously, that's why it's not a dysfunction.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop you from performing at all. And people who are not necessarily then highly functional don't feel it. So, I mean, I don't know. If you're not hugely clever, if you're not hugely successful, do you not feel imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
If you're the hunter-gatherer, do you not feel that because you're busy hunter-gathering and getting stuff on with your life?
Yeah.
Is it just intellectual rumination came across to my mind? That's it. It's just normal. So I found it a very interesting topic to explore.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed doing so. Not necessarily to debunk it, but to understand it.
Yeah.
Both from the research history and the desire of course, researchers to find something that we should talk about. Yep. And trying to get to the realities of it psychologically. Really, what is this thing?
Yes.
Why do successful people claim it?
Yeah.
Why is it not something that we talk about down the pub? So what is it? And how, basically, it seems to me like if this is a burden of success, especially people who perhaps going into new environments and being challenged because they're unusual, they're young, they don't have all the experience or knowledge, so they feel like I'm a fraud. Why do I deserve to be in the boardroom? Why do I deserve to be in an operating theatre? Oh my God, there were so many better surgeons than me. Why am I chosen to do this? Am I really qualified to take this very high pressure legal case? I've never done one. If that's what it is, then how do we help people through these transitions? How do we help people, come to terms with that they are actually very competent, and not dwell on the negative side and the fear of failure, which is again quite normal when you're dealing with high pressure, high value staff.
For sure. I mean, it's interesting when you were saying about all these celebrities or very successful people saying that they suffer or they experience imposter syndrome. And the first thing that came to my mind was, what's there for us then? Ordinary folks, where we might not be that successful, will we be suffering from that too? But as research shown, there's no differences in terms of gender. Everybody suffers from it. So what exactly it is? Is this something that is in our DNA? Is it something that's in our personality? Or is something that we can actually circumvent it or not? So what exactly is this imposter phenomenon? Now, I also want to state very clearly in this podcast that we are not here to debunk it. We're not here to trivialize it. We're here to discuss the fact that what exactly is this phenomenon? Is it something that can be circumvented? Is it something that is perhaps, we are talking about, it's not a syndrome, it's not clinical derived, but it's probably maybe a perspective issue here. How do we reframe those feelings that we have or the thoughts that we have, so that we can actually not be trapped by this whole concept of imposter phenomenon. Maybe if I may, I think one of the things that I was thinking, right, are there any particular individual that are more susceptible to imposter phenomenon? Maybe people who are a little bit more of a perfectionist, perhaps, because they want to do things 150%. as compared to some other people? Would that be a factor that will kind of expose them or put them into that frame of mind that, oh, if I'm not good enough, I'm not perfect enough, I'm an imposter? And also the environment that they're in. Maybe in as you said earlier on, James, especially in a work environment where a lot of pressure, a lot of competition, and if I'm not good as the last person that was in this role, does it mean that I'm actually an imposter? So I think these are also questions that a lot of, I think, our viewers, or rather our listeners, will be actually asking themselves too. And I think third point I was thinking to myself, self-efficacy, one of our psychological terminologies that we use, how good we think we are in terms of the work that we do. And that could be also mitigated by a lot of factors. The environment that we're in, the people that we are doing work with, the project per se, and our own responsibility, right? Whether we are a manager, we are a supervisor, or we're just an ordinary employee. And again, these are some of the factors that could affect it. Yeah, and also the fact that talking about the organization itself, the support system, whether the support system allow us to thrive, or maybe fail in the work that we do, but still be recognized for our success. And I think that also touched on a little bit what we were talking about psychological safety in our earlier episode. So I don't know. These are the things that I was thinking about. What are your thoughts? Do you think there are other factors that we could identify?
Well, I think the first thing about this where it came from, the imposter phenomenon, how it's measured is perhaps the first starting point, and then we can look at what correlates to it, especially in personality and so on. And it's almost clear why then it's they're so common. The measurement tends to be from the scale that was created by Clance and Imes back in the 70s. It's the Clance Imposter Phenomenon scale.
Yes.
1978, or whenever it was, 1985 it was produced. And it has three main factors, I understand. I've not actually seen it. I've not taken the questionnaire, so I do apologize. But apparently the three factors are fear of evaluation. In a competitive society, that's pretty much what happens.
Yep.
Fear of not continuing success. Absolutely, because if I don't, I get fired. I might lose my job, get demoted. That's reasonable as well. And fear of not being as capable as others. Duh. Again, in high pressure jobs, in high environments with very clever people, of course you're questioning that. I'm sure every astronaut thinks, am I as good as my colleagues? My colleagues are so brilliant. Why should I be here? So fear of evaluation, fear of continuing success, fear of not being as capable as others seem to be reasonable anxieties that most people would have if you're in a high performing environment. It seems very reasonable to me.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, what does it link to? Yeah, there's some good studies on, what would we expect it to be linked to? Neuroticism. Yeah, that's the big one.
Yep.
I've seen various studies around for neuroticism and depression. The link is, 0.49, 0.9, 0.49, 0.62. So pretty robust connections with neuroticism. But of course, you're measuring anxiety, fear of. So of course that's what neuroticism measures too. Yep. So you're measuring neuroticism. Is it linked with perfectionism? Yeah, they come out with links with perfectionism. Of course, perfectionism is typically neurotic based. I'm needing to do things perfectly, so as to avoid consequences. Whatever those consequences I'm imagining are real or imagined. So there's a neurotic element about perfectionism, which is why it's not just being conscientious; it's being perfect, having things under control, in an unrealistic expectations of controlling a situation, for fear of, again, an expectation of what might happen. So it's reasonable that perfectionism is measuring very similar stuff that the Imposter Syndrome scale measures. Is there a link then with conscientiousness? Yes, there is. It seems to be around, again, the 0.4 area, but again, not unlikely. but I've actually seen it. I've seen, I think, a negative in conscientiousness as well as a positive correlations. Because some people would suggest that it's the procrastinators who get this, or it leads to procrastination because of the fear of. And of course, that could be a flexibility negative sort of conscientiousness trait as well. But I'm not entirely sure about that, if that link has really been proven. This procrastination is linked to it. It leads to procrastination. I don't know about that, because it's the high performers that do it anyway. And the high performers are producing great results. So if they never actually do it, procrastination is okay as long as you actually execute in the end. It's just your way of ruminating and working out the problem. So it seems to be the strongest link is neuroticism fundamentally. I did look at, and some of the stuff you sent was really useful, but that home environment linked the idea, they linked it in earlier research, again, 80s, 90s, about parental style.
Right.
And that it's to do with, unreasonable or highly controlling tiger mothers and so on, just, really troubling backgrounds. Well, no, there's really no clear evidence of that at all. And in fact, the studies that I could see were quite small studies with undergraduates. And so it's like, there's no real depth to the study here, but it sounds good. But as far as I can see, there's absolutely no strong, of course, a family background could contribute to some particular person's high anxieties or self-doubt of a high-performing child that's been pressured, amazing young kids who are brilliant academically and then buckle. It seems to be their idiosyncratic. That's a real case. As you said, it's a real issue for a particular person and is linked to their upbringing, but that's not necessarily justifying the imposter phenomenon. It's just an unfortunate case that's gone to an extreme and was linked to a parenting style, as we know that can have. The environment can have a very big impact.
Yes.
So in terms of those things, there's links to perfectionism, because of doubts over their abilities or concerns over mistakes seems absolutely normal, because that's what they're measuring is a fear of normal stuff. That's what it seems to be. And that's what led to the question of, well, so really what is this? Is this basic latent anxiety that is reasonable in people who are under very challenging situations, especially if it's a new job, a new change. Undergraduates moving into their first job probably feel this, why am I here when I've got such experienced people? Young army officer, I remember myself, you go in to take over a platoon or a troop of hugely experienced people, and you're in charge at 21? What? It seems to be normal.
But it's interesting. You were saying that earlier on about all this research, James, in the 80s related to the home environment. Immediately something came to mind. Not forgetting in the 80s where the society was moving very fast, right? Because everybody was becoming more affluent. Technology was being introduced. People were becoming a little bit more interested in work, and there was a concept of making money in the 80s. So more competition within the work environment. And that could be also translated to the fact that you were talking about home environment. If you do not succeed in your education, you're not going to have a better life, because everybody was actually pursuing things like that in the 80s. So I think when we look at research, as both of us as psychologists, we are very interested in research. Yes, it provides us some context on the topics that we talk about, but we must also look at the context of how that particular research was done during the era. In the 80s, there was a lot of money going around. So there is obviously added pressure of you need to be better than someone else. You need to be performing better than your colleagues, etc. So the imposter syndrome is, I think, is a very natural phenomenon because of competition. However, if we kind of, move forward to what we are today, right, in 2021, is this imposter syndrome any different, or rather, imposter phenomenon any different from those that was in the 80s and now? And then we know not many research has been done in this way. Perhaps it in itself is a clue for all of us. It is not as devastating as what we were led to believe, because I think, as we were talking earlier on, it could be a perception. It could be a rumination of our emotions, our thoughts, that create that imposter phenomenon. That feeling of I'm not good enough. Who holds the benchmark here? Us, the society, the people we are comparing ourselves with, or the organization per se, right? And I think this is where, again, as I said, we are not trivializing this phenomenon. We are saying, let's be clear, what are we actually talking about? Are we talking about a notion, a concept that we have, and therefore we enlarge that and it becomes an issue for us? And then we feel that we are not adequate enough in our own expertise, our own achievement. This is where reframing is very important, as we were talking about. We need to look at, hey, it's okay. We are human beings. Sometimes we think about good things, sometimes we think about bad things. Should we let those negative thoughts and emotion, take control of ourselves, our lives? If we do that, then perhaps we will experience something like this. And I think it's interesting to...
If I could jump in with something, just to reiterate what you're saying. It was a lady, firstly, I would absolutely agree. There are some people who feel shame and guilt to such an extent, and their anxiety is so great in this matter, that despite their obvious validated competence, they feel like the next step is going to be disaster. That is problematic. It affects well-being. That is core self-esteem issues, and of course that is serious. And that may, once that's unpicked at the individual's level, there may be many factors that have created that sense. Whether it focuses around the sense of guilt and shame of having what they've got or being where they are, it's most likely to be many factors that are not just this imposter phenomenon. Actually, it's just part of the feeling of it. So this is why it correlates so strongly with self-esteem. So those at the extremes of it have very low self-esteem, and that's those reasons for that can be multiple, and of course family and in personality and so on. So not trivializing it by any means, yet this general idea of it should be dealt with, because there's a lady called Valerie Young who runs a company. I think for 30 years she's focused on imposter syndrome. impostersyndrome.com she runs, and she's done TED Talks and so on. And she comes to the idea that the people who, when she runs seminars, people will come into the room feeling, because they're there because they feel like they're imposters, or that's how they want to express their sense of anxiety. And at the end of her talk, she gives them 10 tips to help them. And then at the end, or with feedback, she says, the funny thing was, they always asked me, can you tell me another tip? Can you give me some more advice? And she goes, well, have you done any of those things that I suggested? No, but can you give me some more advice? And she came to the idea that those who want to feel like imposters want to feel that way. They can't get rid of the feeling. And she said, the funny thing was, ultimately, she says, it's not the feeling that's going to go. It's the thinking that has to change first. You've got to change the thinking first, and then the feeling will follow in the end. But if you just want to get rid of the feeling, that ain't going to happen quick. But then she goes, look, no one likes to fail. No one likes to face new challenges. No one likes to not know the answer. No one likes to have to, compete with very impressive colleagues. But that's how it is. He says, if you want to feel confident 24/7 about your abilities to do your job, good luck. This is what she says after 30 years dealing with the case. That's it. She says it's not nice to feel shame. But the issue is that non-imposters feel fine with all those things about challenges in life and not knowing the answer. Non-imposters don't have an issue with it because they think differently.
Yeah.
They just don't see it as, my God, I'm going to give a speech. I'm going to be
Yeah.
found out in my speech. He says, no, that's just my nerves. I'm
Yeah.
nervous because no one wants to mess up in front of
Yeah.
their colleagues or important
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
That's nerves. Every actor feels the same. I'm not
Yes.
worthy being here. I'm
Yep.
going to mess up. I'm going to find out that I'm not a good actor this
Yep.
time.
Yep.
That you reframe that into, well, my body is telling me to get ready because this is important.
Mm.
Non-imposters don't have to get lost in the rumination.
No.
And so it is that limiting, it is just one of those limiting self-beliefs that if you let run out, if the horse starts to run, drag you away with it, yeah, you can get lost in that sense of guilt and shame. You can do so, but it is quite normal.
Yeah.
That's what humans in challenging societies sometimes have to feel like.
Yes, and especially when we are all kind of modeled within the society to be feeling always to look at the negative part of ourselves first.
Yeah.
Then naturally being, as what you said, to have the sense of suffering from imposter phenomenon, it makes us feel good. It makes us feel human to have that. Because if not, then I'll be very awkward because this is not conforming. I mean, this is a bit of social psychology, conforming to the status quo, right? We need to feel to be a bit more broken in order to feel more human, I guess, the way to put it. But I think it is important for human beings to also realize that sometimes we don't need to go to that particular route there. We can come back to celebrate what we have. I think this is a very good way to perhaps kind of end this podcast with on a positive note. I think some of the kind of tips that we can all look at in terms of when we come to that stage of maybe we are doubting our own capabilities. Why are we feeling negative about certain things? A couple of things we can look at. Maybe first one.
And I think if I can just add in,
sure.
The consequence. I mean, as we said before, some people really do feel this, and the people who do are very, very good people. Very capable people. That's the point. And the worst consequence of this, if we can't acknowledge that some people feel it and that these anxieties are real, they really can limit very bright people. Some of our brightest might not share their ideas, might not get that opus done, might not write that book because of these pressures they feel. Might not step into the surgery. And that's not what we want. We want our brilliant people to be brilliant. We want their lights to shine. We want great stuff done. So, I completely agree with you. We need to find ways to make sure that, we can help each other.
Yeah, definitely. And one other point before I go over some of the tips there. Sometimes it's good to feel you're not good enough. Because that can spur us to go, okay, what else can I do to become better in my field, to develop ourselves, rather than just taking the negative strand of it. So, oh yeah, because I'm not good enough, therefore this is. And I think human beings are very good at associating things that are not related, but then we kind of make it even bigger than it appears to be. So going back to some of the factors, some of the maybe tips here. First, I mean, when we feel negative or we feel that we're not good enough, perhaps it's good as human beings for us to take a step back and look at how, where, and why are all these feelings coming? Why are we feeling that way at all? Are there reasons for that negative emotions and thoughts? Then that could be something that we could deal with and mitigate, and then that could reduce the sense of feeling, imposter phenomenon there. Second thing, I think when we feel that way, human beings are also kind of trained very wisely never to talk to other people about it, because it's a shame thing, as what James, you were saying. If I discuss something to someone else, then they will find out about how not good I am. Isn't that very embarrassing? I think this is where, again, we are so conformed. We were not trained to conform with the status quo society and not talk about feelings. I know I don't want to sound like, let's be very fuzzy about it, but I think sometimes it's good to talk about it and understand where it comes from, and then we can address it rather than just bottle it up, because bottling up will only exacerbate your sense of imposter phenomenon. Thirdly, obvious one is celebrate your success. we are where we are, I think it's very important. As I said when we started talking about this earlier part of the podcast here, I say, oh, I suffer from imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon too, because sometimes I still pinch myself whether I am good enough to talk about certain topic. But then yes, it's where our mind has lead us to that negative spot. Sometimes we just need to, you know what? Hey, I'm here. I've done that. Those are my success. We need to take responsibility and recognize that. And I think most of us don't do that enough, right? Because we can't gravitate to the negative bit of our lives.
Yeah.
So I think that is very important to celebrate your success. We talked about perfectionism earlier on, how to be reducing that because that leads to neuroticism. So perhaps we could think about what does 100% mean to us, right? Someone else might have a different benchmark there. It doesn't matter. If I've done my best within the context, within the book that I do, that is good enough. Of course, reality is that within a environment of an organization, there will always be, excuse me, certain KPIs that you need to reach to, but we have to do our best, right? And if your best is 95%, that's it. You know, you cannot push yourself because we all know when we try to be overly perfect, we will start suffering from stress, burnt out, etc. And I think that will only add on to the sense of imposter phenomenon. So don't do that. Just let go of perfectionism. One of the things that I quite like is because human beings are all trained to be very outward looking, right? We don't want to let people know who we are. We can't cover ourselves. We don't show a lot of compassion towards ourselves. And I think self-compassion is very important to realize that it is okay that I am not fulfilling 100% of perfection. It is okay that I make mistake. Obviously, with the context of organization, if we have a safe environment for people to make mistakes, organization should also support that and celebrate the success of the individual. So it's okay to feel that you are not going to be doing everything perfect all the time. So self-compassion is important, I think. And lastly, what you said earlier on, James, is we all don't accept that this is part of who we are as human beings, a process. You know, we are going to be feeling not so great today. Tomorrow we'll be feeling great because of different things. So I think accepting that this is part of the process and not let yourself ruminate too much about the negative thoughts and emotion. Slowly we'll be able to, you know, see the light and be more positive towards the way we approach our work and also our lives, I think. And I think this is very important to highlight to our listeners here some of the tips. Obviously, this is not the only tips. If you have found any other tips that will help you in any way to mitigate the imposter phenomenon, let us know. Do share with us. We're happy to also share with the rest of our listeners. So that's what I think will be some of the tips. Any other tips from your side or any last words from you, James?
I think they're nice ideas. Now they're resonated by a lot of advice out there as well on it. You know, that self-acceptance, positive self-talk, sharing and discussing it with other people, so that you're not alone. It is normal. It is good to talk it out sometimes.
Yeah.
You don't have to be brilliant every day, but of course you are good. That's why you're there.
Exactly.
And I think reminding oneself of why you're doing things, that's what's intrinsically motivating about those tasks, why you're there, the purpose you're there for. It can push you through that little anxiety. I'm not sorry, I don't mean that. It can be very large anxiety. I think for managers, just the idea to remember that when people are put into high challenging environments, new promotions and so on, or for students, you know, just joining university, even any big change, that's when people need support to allow their brilliance to shine. If anxiety can smother confidence, of course, it's the opposite corollary of it, or the opposite of it. So mentoring, coaching, supporting, recognizing, rewarding, you know, is very important to do. If you want brilliant people to shine, help them overcome their own anxieties that are just normal when they're faced with big tasks, new tasks, or very high pressure, high octane sort of environments.
Yep.
Support acknowledge is what managers should do if you want the brilliance of your people to shine.
Yeah, definitely. Those are good words, good advice there. Well, with that, we will have to come to a close of our podcast. As usual, if you have enjoyed listening to this episode and have any suggestions and comments, please send an email to us or sitechat@omnisite.com, or you can tweet to site_chat.